I pray for the safety of all good people who come to Zion, even Gentiles. But we can't expect God to do all the work.
Here's the deal. When it comes to modern media, I exist in a very peculiar and specific mindset. I grew up an edgy gamer punk screaming obscenities on my Xbox 360 while playing Black Ops, and I was a little chunky as a teenager. Then to get rid of that weight, I went too far in the other direction and ended up anorexic from starving myself into a skinny loser. So, I get the bad rap. People saying things like grown-ups shouldn't play video games or watch movies or some other such utter foolishness. I get it. Except now I'm lean, fit, and regularly deadlift more than double my own body weight. I'm in a happy place, I'm dating my dream girl, and I not only still enjoy video games, I actually attribute a significant portion of my success in the gym to video games. And the same way that the ancient Greeks looked to Hercules, we look at our modern mythos. In my case, I wanted to punch a boulder like Chris Redfield. I'm finding all of the time that others are starting to do the same, and so I want to start looking at and breaking down some of these more inspirational characters and talking about why we find them so inspiring. Today's topical character, as the name reveals, is Joshua Graham.
After I failed Caesar and he had me burned alive, thrown into the Grand Canyon. I survived because the fire inside burned brighter than the fire around me. I fell down into that dark chasm. The flame burned on and on.
There's no way around it. Suffering must always precede growth. This is why we find protagonists who don't suffer so annoying, and the heroes who do so endearing. Because we are supposed to relate to that suffering and embrace it as we learn to become a better version of ourselves. When it comes to Joshua, he has suffered greatly, but his growth is even greater. Who is Joshua Graham? If you've played the Fallout New Vegas DLC, you'll recognize his name. If not, I'll break it down. Raised in a Mormon village in Utah called New Canaan, Joshua was a man of God who lost his way as a tactician and executioner for a fascist regime called Caesar's Legion in the Mojave wasteland of Fallout New Vegas. He and the man who would come to call himself Caesar, or Kaiser by many, were close friends, and they worked together in tandem to build up the Legion and make the wasteland a better place, purging degeneracy by murdering raiders and hanging those who would not join the Legion on crosses. This did not go as planned, however, because eventually the dream of making the wasteland a better place became something far worse. Joshua Graham was Caesar's top general, a legate as they called him, a man of action, bearing with him a ruthless tenacity. However, in their quest, they both ended up losing their way. Caesar became power mad, and Joshua became his most loyal follower, always at the right hand of the man he had called his friend, which made it all the more tragic when Caesar betrayed his friend Joshua. The Legion doesn't tolerate failure, and Joshua failed greatly in one of his missions. When attempting to take the Hoover Dam away from the New California Republic, the Legion was defeated and beat back. Many of Graham's soldiers were killed, and he returned to the Legion in shame. Now, I assume Graham had anticipated his return to be met with some scorn and reprimand, and perhaps even some disciplinary action, but I don't know that he could ever bring himself to fathom what really awaited him upon his arrival to the Legion. Caesar saw in Graham an opportunity to demonstrate to his followers that failure absolutely will not be tolerated, even at the highest ranks. And so he chose to make an example out of Joshua. Caesar ordered him to be covered in pitch, lit on fire, and then watched as his friend was thrown into the Grand Canyon, a display of what happens to those who fail Caesar. As Joshua fell into the canyon, his body burning and his bones breaking, crashing against the rocks and tumbling down into a dark chasm, it was there that Joshua began to find his faith again. Laying alone at the bottom, betrayed by his only friend, his body burning and his bones breaking, Joshua should have died there. For reasons unexplained, he woke up the next morning alive. Maybe the fall plunged him into enough mud to extinguish the flames and break the fall, or maybe the rain was enough to dim the flames down, but he did awake the next morning and in extreme anguish. A lesser man may have given up there, but Joshua saw his open eyes as a blessing from God, a second chance to live and an opportunity to make things right. He dragged his broken body out of the canyon and tried to tend his wounds enough to move, and for 3 grueling months Joshua limped and crawled, eating whatever bugs and berries he could find until he eventually reached New Canaan again, his home. After his betrayal at Caesar's hand, he expected that his former family in New Canaan would also reject him and turn him away after all of the pain and murder he had caused at the behest of Caesar across the wasteland. And yet upon his arrival, his childhood village welcomed him in. They helped him to heal and tended his wounds. They forgave him for his evil deeds, just happy to have him home again. A prodigal son.
The next morning, I woke up and crawled out of the northern edge of the Grand Canyon, that cursed place. It took me 3 months to reach New Canaan. It was as though the prodigal son had returned. They welcomed me like I had never left, never done anything to shame them. The fire that had kept me alive was love. Their love. God's love. I will never be able to repay the debt I owe to them, but I must try.
Unfortunately, the damage done to his body was too great for anything resembling a full recovery. Joshua's skin was too damaged to be exposed to the elements without infection, so he's forced to wear bandages around his entire body. Every day he has to strip them off, wash his previous pair, and equip new fresh bandages. That means he is in constant pain, and I don't just mean physically. But that pain reminds him constantly of what he did for Caesar, and the atrocities he committed under Caesar's orders. His family never turned him away, though. His shame and the 30 years of pain he had caused others was forgiven by his family, and so his pride and vanity was washed away. Joshua calls this his second baptism, the first by water, where Christ brought him to salvation, and the second by fire, where Christ redeemed him from his fall and brought him back to his faith. Are you seeing the dual meanings here? He went home to his village and was forgiven by his family the same way he returned home to Christ and was forgiven by him. All of this is compelling and tragic in itself, but it's all just the groundwork. This backstory alone is not what I think makes Joshua Graham so inspiring, but rather, it's what he does next. What would a normal man have done next? Probably stayed with his family, tried to live out the rest of his life in mild comfort and simply be grateful to be alive and have gotten his forgiveness. That is not what Joshua Graham was called to do, however. His second chance brought with it obligation. And that is what makes Joshua so inspiring, I think, is that in this instance, when most men would have settled and stopped moving, Joshua instead answered his calling, and while in perpetual pain, began to stalk the wasteland. Only this time he brought with him a righteous change. He would try to save people in need instead of just killing them for territory. Had he stayed in New Canaan and stayed quiet, his life would have been easier. Instead, however, his actions began to spread around the wasteland, and eventually Caesar heard the rumors. Rumors of a burned man who was saving other people and making change. A man whose very existence demonstrated Caesar's own failure, haunting him to the point where Caesar made it forbidden to speak Joshua Graham's name under threat of death, and began hiring assassins to seek out and kill this supposed burned man. These assassins failed, and did not dissuade him from his mission. Trekking the wasteland in constant anguish, changing and washing his bandages every day to avoid infection, all while fighting off Caesar's assassins, there laid all of the justifications for hatred, anger, bitterness, and a quest for vengeance against Caesar. Instead, Joshua forgave Caesar, stating that he hated the sin, but loved the sinner. Eventually, one of Caesar's former recon scouts, Ulysses, equipped a local tribe called the Whitelegs with weapons and a task to destroy New Canaan and execute the burned man. In exchange, they would be welcomed to work with Caesar's legion, something that they had been wanting. So with their new weapons, they did attack and sack New Canaan, Joshua's home. The survivors escaped into the wilderness, fleeing to Zion Canyon, with Joshua choosing to stay behind and become acting war chief for a different tribe called the Dead Horses, along with another missionary and a friend of Joshua named Daniel, who joined a third tribe called the Sorrows. When the player character finds him, Joshua is in the midst of fending off a tribe of bloodthirsty enemies while also trying to eliminate them and make the area safe once again. The other missionary from his village, Daniel, is preoccupied with trying to preserve the innocence of the Sorrows gang. They're not violent, but they are malleable, which Joshua wants to utilize to train them and make them warriors. If the Sorrows are not trained, they will become a burden to the people who must protect them, and will eventually be swallowed up by the wasteland. Daniel worries that if they are trained to fight, however, it will be killing the innocent spirit that he thinks they are entitled to maintain. The player can choose what to do about this. In my opinion, it's difficult not to agree with Joshua on this matter, though. If the Sorrows are not trained, then yes, the same thing that happened to New Canaan will eventually happen to Zion Canyon, where Daniel wants to take the Sorrows. See, Joshua may have learned to forgive, but he did not utilize scripture to excuse apathy or laziness. Joshua is still a man of action. Ultimately, all of this culminates in what I think makes people so endeared to Joshua. He has learned kindness and patience, but that has not come at the cost of his strength and willingness to act. All he has been through has sharpened him, not dulled him. There are dozens of videos where his voice has been recreated through AI to read passages of the Bible, because people want to feel like he is reading it to them. This character is a leader, and he inspires people not only by demonstrating that we are capable of enduring whatever pain we think should kill us, but also he shows that his religion isn't one of weakness, but rather it is one of strength. Now, I'm religious myself, and let me tell you, I crave in our world the sharpness and capability of Joshua Graham in the modern church. The pastors and priests of today are so often weak, not just in physicality, but in spirit. They demonstrate only the passive nature of Scripture while deliberately ignoring the active passages. We live in an age of prosperity pastors and pushover priests. And so even as a fictional character, Joshua's mentality harkens back to an older age of very real Christian men. With his beliefs, he brings the strength and struggle that is supposed to come with Christianity without losing the grace and forgiveness aspect of it. If the player lets Joshua fall too deep into his need for vengeance, they actually get the bad ending of this DLC. The only way to get the good ending is to help Joshua train the Sorrows and fight back against their enemies, but to show mercy to the leader. Not for the leader's benefit, but for the benefit of the malleable Sorrows tribe. To show them that fighting and killing to defend yourself is not bad, but that sparing the unarmed does bring with it the element of grace needed to preserve one's own humanity and not fall into your own quest for vengeance.
Don't listen to this thing. His cries are those of a mad beast caught in a thicket. He gave no mercy to my family, and I will give none to his. He has a debt to pay for what he's done, and I've come to collect. And so he's chosen to cower in the water like a dumb animal. I want to take from them what they took from me, from my family. In this life, I want them to suffer. I want all of them to die in fear and pain. I want to have my revenge against him, against Caesar. I want to call it my own, to make my anger God's anger, to justify the things I've done. Sometimes I tell myself that these wildfires never stop burning, but I'm the one who starts them, not God, not them. I can always see it in my mind, the warmth and the heat. It will always be a part of me. But not today. Go. Get out of here. Go back to the Great Salt Lake.
One's own humanity and not fall into your own quest for vengeance. Justice does not have to come at the expense of mercy, and grace does not have to come at the expense of strength. Thanks so much for watching. I wanted to make this video to talk about this character because I'm just so fascinated by him, and I've seen his relevance popping back up recently, so now just seemed like a really good time to cover it and give my thoughts on it. Let me know what characters inspire you, and maybe I can do a video breakdown on them as well soon. I plan to do a lot more like this. So if you found this video insightful, please consider liking it, and also subscribe if you want to see other videos similar to this one. Check out the description for a link to my Discord server, and you can find my music in my Linktree, along with the other endeavors that I've been working on. Until then, I can't wait to see you in the next video.